All right, so let's talk a little stock up and stock down about the players in general. And of course, we have to start with the quarterbacks, Rick, because that's where it always starts. If you came into this week and knew nothing about any of these quarterbacks, which one impressed you the most?
I would have to say the guys that worked out. I understand Anthony Richardson just blew it away from an athletic standpoint. I mean, his numbers were better than a lot of the DBs and the receivers that we'll probably talk about on stock up and stock down. And I don't know, he may have been, even though he's a quarterback, the top athlete at the combine this year. The way he tested, because he opened up a lot of eyes. All of a sudden, there's going to be a lot of people going back and reassessing. You have this freak athlete now, if you want to put him in that category. Now, can we teach him to be more consistent as a quarterback? But the quarterback, I was more impressed. I loved Will Levis's. That's the first time I got to see him throw live. I thought he had a very strong arm, a very quick release. One thing I noticed when he was throwing to his left, he has a tendency to not open his hip, so it kind of blocks him getting across his body on the throw, which struggled a little bit with his accuracy going to left. That's something that can technically be cleaned up. It's a lot like my golf swing, where it's very stiff and rigid, especially when I'm trying to play a draw and put it over to the left side. So, but I think that stuff. But the guy that I was just blown away by was CJ Stroud. And I know he didn't run, but boy, did he look smooth throwing the ball. His coordination and his technique with his feet and his arm, throwing to the left, flowing to the right. The deep ball accuracy, the on-time throws on the throws that went outside the numbers, everything just looked crisp. And I can't remember a quarterback that came in and looked that comfortable on that big a stage and just threw with ease and threw with accuracy and threw with confidence. And he just keeps continuing to trend up. We started with the, like I said, I mentioned I saw some athletic skill set more in the Michigan game, even though they lost. Everybody has talked about what he did in the Georgia game and how he made plays with his feet, how he made off-schedule type throws. And right now, I am bumping him up. And I'm hard to say this, but from what he's been doing, I have him and Bryce Young 1A and 1B right now. So it'll be interesting to see. And if Bryce Young would have went out there and threw with the rest of them, but that's what happens when guys don't get it, don't take advantage of an opportunity. And we talked to Bryce Young, and he says that was the whole plan. So it wasn't because he was injured and he's going to go down and throw at his pro day. And he's going to do that because he feels more comfortable throwing to the receivers that he's going to throw to. But CJ Stroud, to me, is making a pretty strong case right now versus Bryce Young that he should be the first quarterback off the board.
This feels like breaking news, by the way, Rick. I mean, this is a huge step for you. And I said it during the week because I had heard from teams over the course of once we got into All-Star game mode that there will be a conversation among teams about who their quarterback one is, and CJ Stroud would be in that conversation. And you're now, you have them neck and neck. And Danny Cannell said this last week on set. He said, when you meet CJ in person, you see a different person, because I think maybe he makes it look too easy on television. And sometimes we mistake that for a system quarterback, if you want to call it that. But he has leadership qualities. I give him a lot of credit for giving you the business when you were giving a hard time about his first start.
Yeah, I love that. That puts a check in my box, because I like to see, not criticizing. I know we have to be a little bit more careful, but when you do kind of go and hit substance instead of fluff sometimes on these interviews, I like to see if there's a little bit of bite back. And CJ, there was no question. He didn't like that. When I mentioned that his first start against
look at Debo,
the Minnesota Golden Gophers, the first half was atrocious, and I said,
"You said that to his face."
Yeah, I said, CJ. I mean, I said, well, geez, this is the end of the quarterback run at Ohio State, and I think he told me they give a brother a chance to warm up a little bit.
That's what he
here.
said. And he was laughing, but you could tell he was serious. Like he wasn't going to just sit there and take it. And he wasn't being rude. He wasn't being mean or disrespectful, but he was defending himself. And I think he wanted to make it clear that he's a good player. He's a great player, and he thinks he's the best quarterback in this class. Let me ask you about Bryce. Obviously, you have a relationship with him. He's incredibly smart. We know
how was it? Did you tell everybody I had a relationship with a lot of the Alabama kids that came up? It was kind of a love fest. You love guys, but was it getting a little bit obnoxious before we started interviewing?
No, it was great. In fact, DB, I'll tell you a quick story. The first Alabama player we talked to was linebacker Henry To'oTo'o, and he may have been one of the most energetic interviews we did. He was a lot of fun to talk to. And the first words out of his mouth when we were live on air, he said, "Yeah, man, Rick's my dog," which is not what you hear a lot of 22-year-olds say about general managers. But they had a lot of respect for you down there. And you,
Rick, can I be your dog on this podcast, or I'm not there yet? I got still a ways to go. Got a few more shows to get there.
No, you've been my dog since day one, Rick. That's how I roll, man.
Is my brother your dog now? Because there was some controversy on whether I'm your dog or my brother Chris is your dog. There's a lot going on the back end of that combine. They say there's a lot of business that gets done behind the scenes. There's also a lot of business in the media gets done on who is actually Ryan's dog. Is it Chris Spielman or is it Rick Spielman?
I'll tell you, like you just told us, Bryce and CJ are 1 and 1A. I think Chris and Rick, they're battling for number one dog.
Well, it's just an honor to be up there with you, just to say that we're in the presence and Ryan Wilson can bless us as 1 and 1A. 1A and 1B.
So let's talk about Bryce, because do you care? We knew 5 and 8 is fine. He had big hands. I think he was the back among the handful of 10 or 12 quarterbacks that were there. Hand size is not a concern. 204 was a surprise, and he chugged a bunch of water, I would guess. He didn't say that to us. Do you care that he's 204, whether he plays at 195 or any of that?
No, I think the biggest thing, and maybe the reason why, is because that was the biggest question on him coming in. It wasn't the talent, it wasn't the arm, wasn't the athleticism. It was how much you're going to weigh. So you kind of take that weight at 204 with a grain of salt. But in our reports and in that draft room, we have a weight history on these guys, because all of a sudden a guy can be 180, 190, and then he shows up at the combine and he's 204. Or right. You can look at the opposite. A guy can weigh 350 and he shows up at the combine at 325, but eventually it goes back to 350 9 times out of 10. So there's an emphasis put on the weight at the combine, in this case for Bryce's situation, but there is a history that we have kept, or the teams have kept, over the last 2 years of their weight fluctuation. And the other thing is you want to make sure that, okay, if they're gaining weight as they go through their career, it's maybe 10, 15, 20-pound increments, which is normal human. But if a guy goes from, 150 to 250, he was benching 225 one time, now he's benching 225 50 times, over-exaggerating the point, as I always do. Then you have some concern on, was there any enhancement during that process?
All right, one last thing, and then we'll take a break before we look at the rest of these guys. We haven't talked about him. We'll talk on Wednesday with Brady Quinn, Tanner Key, the quarterback out of Stanford. But the one thing I wanted to ask you, he's 6'5", 231, but he had the smallest hands of any quarterback there at 9 3/8 inches. Is 9 3/8 inches okay? Is that
plenty of? Yeah, no, everybody gets where people got concerned, and there'll be one player that I'm going to talk about on potentially stock down, is as long as the quarterback's hands are over 9, then there's not a lot of concern with it.
Okay. All right. I just want to check, because that stuck out to me for someone of that size to be at the bottom of the hand list, but it still meets threshold for NFL teams, which is good news for Tanner.